Doris Perez, hi, you're the first person on here today. Hi, Doris. Beach Mama 121. I think you're the third or the fourth. X2210X, hi. John Corella, I see you. Nancy Margie or Margie, hello, I see you. Justin Harris, I see you. Miranda, that went too fast. Nancy at DC, I see you. Photography by Kelly Williamson. Hello. Hi. Carolyn Stein. Hello from South Africa. How are we? How are we? Good. What are we? Today, Wednesday afternoon. Welcome back to Home Together. I've lost my co-host today. He had a doctor's appointment. It was the only time the doctor could see him. So no Patrick today, just me, Maria. And all of you. I'm so happy to be able to connect with all of you, to remind those of you who are staying at home that you're doing an active service for our greater country and certainly for the state that you're living in. So I want to remind you of that because it's something I remind myself of every single day when I get up and I'm at home and I say to myself, I'm doing something, I'm being of service, I'm following the rules, I'm helping healthcare workers, I'm helping to flatten the curve along with everybody else. Jeff Brown, Soul Shaping, hi, nice to see you. I follow him. He has a great account here on Instagram, so thank you for joining us. And I'm super excited about Dr. Laurie Santos, who is coming on today. She has a great new podcast. It's called The Happiness Lab. Who doesn't want that? She has a new course on Coursera. It's called The Science of Wellbeing. Over 2 million people have enrolled. It's free, and it's based on the course that she's been teaching at Yale, which is now the single most popular course in the history of Yale. Just pause with that. Yale's been around several hundred years, and Dr. Laurie Santos has come up with the most popular course in its history. And it's about teaching us about life strategies, about what is happiness. Oh, and she's already here. She's prompt, and she's joining us. Oh, I thought I saw it go by. Pushkin Pods. That's what it said, but I didn't. Oh, I don't see it there now. It went by me. Oh, there it is. Anyway, I'm super glad to be talking to Dr. Laurie Santos, who will tell us what we need to know. There she is. Hi.
Hey, Maria. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Nice to see you. I'm so thrilled that we're connecting this way and that you're able to connect with everybody who's listening. I just want to say I had a dad who went to Yale, 2 brothers who went to Yale, one of whom was in Silliman College, none of who got to take your popular course. So tell me, what did they miss out on?
Yeah, well, the course, well, they can take it online on Coursera.org. So they didn't miss out just yet. But yeah, so the course is all about the science of well-being, like what evidence-based practices we can do every day to feel better. And so we start with lots of misconceptions about happiness. Like we think it's about our circumstances and how much money we have. And then we talk a little bit about what happiness is really about. And it's about things we don't expect, like social connection, gratitude, our mindsets. The good news is that we can become happier if we just put in the right work.
What I thought was really interesting is that you developed this after looking at your students or looking at students at the school and being really concerned about what you were seeing regarding their mental well-being. And you thought, hey, they need something like this. We all need something like this. Is that how it kind of evolved?
Yeah, I took on a new role where I became one of their heads of college. And so that is just a funny way of saying that I live on campus with students. Like my house is right in the middle of their dorm, in the middle of the courtyard. And I interact with students. I hang out with them in the dining hall and in their coffee shop. And I'll be honest, I was kind of surprised by what I was seeing, just the level of mental health dysfunction. So many students are just depressed and anxious and overwhelmed, or just kind of fast forwarding, worried about the summer, worried about what's going on. And so I really wanted to give them evidence-based strategies for what they could do to feel better. And so that's how the course kind of started. As you mentioned, it went a little bit viral on campus with so many people trying to take it. But that really made me realize that this is a class that shouldn't just be for Yale students, who are 19 and have full lives ahead of them. Like, we all kind of feel like we're not flourishing as much as we could. Again, in this context of COVID-19, but just in general, many of us feel like we're putting in the work to feel happier, but we're not getting there. And so that can
Why
really...
aren't we? Why aren't we? Tell us that. I mean, not just for this moment in time, but why do we see so much anxiety, so much depression, and yet so much pursuit of happiness?
Yeah, I mean, what the data really suggests is that we have these incorrect theories about what makes us happy. We think it's about our circumstances. We have to be Instagram famous, or we have to be rich, or we have to change our partner, we have to switch our job. But the science really suggests that if you look at people with lots of different circumstances don't matter as much as we think. You have incredibly successful people, with lots of money and seemingly perfect lives, who are deeply unhappy. And then by the same token, you have people with incredibly meager circumstances, sometimes awful circumstances, who report that their lives are filled with meaning. Even really awful circumstances can lead to a lot of happiness, which is counterintuitive. And so I think the problem, the reason we're all not flourishing as much as we could, is like, we're putting in the work, but we're doing it wrong. We're going after stuff that really just doesn't matter for our well-being.
So were you surprised that like 2 million people have signed up for this free course it's called The Science of Wellbeing on Coursera? 2 million people.
Yeah, it was a little surreal, I'll be honest. It was already, before the crisis, it was already one of the biggest courses on Coursera, this platform. But right around March, we had about 1.5 million new learners sign up in just a short few weeks. And I think that tells us two things. One is, I think, people have a little time on their hands, or a lot of people have time in the context of this crisis. So, taking a class seems interesting. But I think a bigger thing we're learning is, like, people want to know what to do to protect their mental health during this crisis. Yeah. I mean, we all know what to do to protect our physical health. And hopefully everyone who's listening is doing it, washing your hands, socially distancing, all this stuff. But I think a lot of us are feeling anxious and panicked, like we want to do something to protect our mental health right now. Like, we realize this is something we need to work on, but people just don't really know what they can do. And so the hope is that the class is providing exactly that, these evidence-based, simple strategies you can use just to feel better right now.
There's a lot of people on here who are saying they're taking the class right now. It's really helpful to them. They're getting a lot out of it. I have a son who's about to graduate, senior in college. And all of his friends and so many other parents I talk to have kids graduating talk about anxiety. They are going out into a vastly different job market than they thought existed 3 months ago, right? What if you were teaching this course to students right now today, what would you be saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the first thing I would do is just validate that. Like, there's a reason this is a pandemic, right? This is probably the worst collective crisis that anybody in any generation right now has been through, but especially our young people. I mean, it's just awful. And as you see with your student who's graduating, just the grieving that they're going through, not going through the normal celebrations and the normal commencements and things. I mean, not to mention the job market and what they face later. So first is just to say, yeah, this is awful, like no question about it. But there are still things you can do to make it better, or at least things you can do to not make it worse. And so one of those things is just to recognize that even though we don't have control over the economy and maybe even this virus, there's a lot that we can control in terms of our mindset. You could decide to react to this crisis with panic and with terror, or you could react to this crisis as a challenge and say, all right, I'm going to try to do everything I can to protect my mental health. I'm going to become other-oriented and see what I can do to help other people. I'm going to look at what I can do to get through this crisis with some resilience. And those things, they could be hard, but they're still definitely under our control.
You talk about being other-oriented. I love that expression. And many of the people I've spoken to while we've been doing this series said, okay, when you feel helpless, the best thing is to go out and try to be helpful. Is that what you're really saying when you say other-oriented? So to get oneself out of one's own mind, to go and figure out how to help somebody else?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, both in the context of a crisis, especially when you feel like you don't have agency, which I think this crisis is giving all of us. It's like, what can we do to help? It's like, just stay home. It's like, no, there are things you can do. You can get out there and help other people. I mean, happy people are people who tend not to be relatively selfish. They tend to be really focused on other people. So they tend to, on average, for across different salary levels, give more to charity. They tend to volunteer more of their time. And it's funny because I think this is pretty countercultural. Right now I'm seeing lots of articles about self-care and treat yourself and, self. But those articles sometimes make me a little worried because the research suggests that treating yourself isn't the best way to promote your happiness right now. It's to become other oriented. And I think this is a great time for it because a lot of us have these kind of weird windfalls that make this time a little different. So some of us have financial windfalls, right? Like we're not paying for our commute or the gas we paid for our commute in the morning, or we're not, paying for our morning latte or going out to eat as much. Like those are small little chunks of money, but we could use those chunks of money to help other people. And even those of us who might not be in that financial position, we have some temporal windfalls. Some of us have a little bit more time on our hands than we're used to. And if you're in that position, you could use that time to call an elderly neighbor or, advocate to get, more your medical you can do to become a little bit more other oriented.
I like what you were saying, that there's so many articles now that you're seeing that talk about self-care, learn about the self, be a self-healer, and that actually has you worried. Now, I didn't grow up with any of the self-care movement that my kids talk to me about now. I think I always say it would make my parents roll over in the grave if I were talking to them about my own self-care. And I do think that that's important, right? To care for yourself, but you're concerned that maybe it's all going overboard.
Or it's going about it the wrong way. When self-care is about, buy yourself a nice bubble bath, I see that and think of the opportunity costs. Like that money that went to the nice bubble bath could be something you did to help your neighbors. And knowing the happiness research, that it suggests that spending money on other people can feel better than spending money on yourself. There's some wonderful studies by Liz Dunn and her colleagues at the University of British Columbia. She just walks up to people on the street and gives them money and tells them how to spend it. Either spend this on yourself, treat yourself, or spend it on someone else. And she finds that the people who spend the money on other people are actually happier. And so that's the thing I worry about. It's that, we're giving this advice that might be at an opportunity cost of things we could do to actually promote our well-being a little bit better.
So what do you say to people who are saying, that's fine to tell me, money doesn't bring happiness. I just lost my job. I don't have money. I can't pay my rent. I can't pay my electricity bills. I do need money to be happy.
Yeah, well, I think it depends. I mean, the idea is money doesn't make you happy if you have a certain amount of it, right? Like, the roof over your head, if you're worried about putting food on the table, like, yeah, you definitely need money to increase happiness. But for those of us that still have a job, for those of us that are okay, but are just looking at a stock portfolio that maybe crashed, or feeling we don't have as much, like that's probably in range that the change in money that you're experiencing isn't going to affect you that much. And so I think that's one thing we need to keep into perspective. For the people who are going through the real crisis, you really are in dire straits in terms of your finances or in terms of your work opportunities. I think there, the thing to recognize is that even the worst of challenges in life, even the worst that life can give us, what the research shows is that post-traumatic stress is a thing, but there's also post-traumatic growth.
Right.
A lot of research suggests that like going through something awful like this is going to build meaning in your life. It's going to strengthen your social relationships. It's actually going to strengthen your spiritual connections. And so a lot of people go through those crises and they wind up better on the other side. Now that doesn't put food on your table, but it's a thing when your minds get in this spin of not just what am I going to do right now, but what am I going to do in the future and what's going to happen. And just like remembering a little bit that we're much more resilient than we think can be quite powerful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good message to give to oneself. You are far more resourceful than you think, far more resilient than you think. I love the idea of, for those who have lost a job or who are feeling really insecure, or those who are graduating, to honor the grief that they're experiencing, to honor the fact that they're depressed about it, right? And that to then also talk about the growth that can come out of moments like this. That seems to be in a really important thing that we could all be doing now. And also, as I think your main point is strengthening relationships. That's really the foundation for happiness, is it not?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the ways this post-traumatic growth works, right? Is that when we go through these awful times, we reach out to people and people help us, or, people reach out to us and help us, right? We wind up with stronger relationships often through bad experiences in ways we don't expect. It also causes us to recognize which relationships in life really matter and which don't.
Yeah.
Even if you're not going through something awful right now, I think a lot of us are experiencing that. Like just social distancing is causing me to realize, who do I really want on that Zoom call, like on the other side of that? call, right? And who, you know, who maybe it wasn't a relationship that was that meaningful to me. And so, and these kinds of moments where we learn that stuff, that can allow us to grow. That I'm hoping that a lot of the things I'm learning during this time are going to stick with me after this crisis. You know, the connections I've reformed during this crazy time, or just the ways that I've learned to like make peace with some of the FOMO and some of the other things. Like, I think a lot of us are realizing that some of these changes, we didn't ask for them. And in a lot of ways, they're bad. But there are weird blessings in this time, too, that I think it's worth recognizing.
How will your course, your teaching change in the fall because of this experience, because of how it impacted you and how it kind of impacts the culture at large?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways to answer that. One is like, how will the content change? And I think, honestly, not very much. I mean, the tips that we talked about 2 years ago are still the same tips that you need to get through this crisis. But there's a different way to answer that, which is that I think universities have been really shaken to their core. You know, right now, you know, all my students who used to be in my courtyard just outside the window over here are gone. You know, they're scattered all over the country. And I think we're realizing that, you know, these universities were really in some ways a great equalizer, you know, where everyone on campus had the same housing, had the same food, had the same internet opportunities. And I think if we're all back on campus, that will be great. You know, if folks are scattered around, I think universities have to really think about how they can equalize the playing field a bit more for students who are, you know, taking these classes online and really struggling with access in a way that I think people didn't really expect a couple months ago.
Laurie, what's the biggest single misconception about happiness? And do you think, this is a two-part question, the pursuit of it, which seems to be so uniquely American in a way, makes us less happy?
Yeah, I think the everybody wants to be happy. I mean, you know, we have it like, you know, stuck in the Declaration of Independence, maybe in a way countries do, but I think everyone wants to be happy. The problem is, I think we focus on the wrong stuff. You know, we really go after changing our circumstances, you know, and the research suggests that that's not the way to do it. Like the way to do it is through your mindset and through your behavior. It's often not in the ways we think. And I think that's the particularly American thing, is that, you know, we're going after, in our very American, you know, like kind of Protestant kind of way, we like go after it really seriously, but we're doubling down on the wrong stuff. Whereas if you look cross-culturally at countries that tend to be happier on average, you know, say like Nordic countries or something, they're just much more at peace with the kinds of things that bring them joy. And those things tend to be the stuff that science shows really works. You know, taking time for social connection, taking time to be present and savor experiences. You know, I'm thinking of like hygge and these concepts of just kind of being in comfort, enjoying it. You know, it's not very American. We're kind of like more get up and go or buy something to be happier, right? But the studies suggest that that just doesn't work as well.
Is there anything in the research about the tempo by which we live our lives, about the speed, the busyness that seems very American? And I've been guilty of this myself, running around, getting up, booking myself kind of all day long, and then now feeling like, wow, I don't like how I felt.
Yeah, I think this is a big one. And I think another one that Americans in particular get wrong. There's a great new concept in positive psychology called time affluence, which is the subjective
time affluence.
Time affluence. It's the subjective sense that you're wealthy in time. And so it's the opposite of what many of us experience. I'm sure you experience, Maria, which is time famine, which is like, you're like hungry for time. You don't have it. And what's ironic is that we're more time famished as Americans right now. But if you actually look at the amount of free time we have, it's more than we had before. The problem is that our time is broken up into these tiny chunks, what researchers like Ashley Willens and colleagues call time confetti. You know, so it's like little 5 minutes here, little. And when we have this time confetti, we don't often use it in a like nutritious time way. We kind of like just check our email or do some fast thing. We don't like engage in some activity that we can enjoy really deeply that gives us flow. And so I think what the research shows is that promoting your own time affluence, especially even instead of your wealth affluence, can actually promote happiness. Ashley Willens has some lovely data showing that people who prioritize their time affluence, having a little bit more free time, you know, unscheduled time in your calendar, those folks end up happier than people who prioritize money.
Time affluence as opposed to time famine. I love that.
A life changer for me, so I hope it helps you too.
I love that. And time confetti, I think maybe time confetti is also kind of a misnomer. I mean, time confetti just the confetti is like this, then kind of what can you do in time confetti? Probably not
You kind of
much.
grab it, right? They're just like little pieces everywhere. Exactly.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I love that you have this new podcast. It's called the Happiness Lab. Do you have people come on it, talk about research into this pursuit?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I love doing the podcast, I mean, I love doing the class too, but the podcast is special because you can hear people's tales of chasing after happiness and what worked and what really didn't work. You know, so we have these wonderful narrative stories of people, you know, who've been through it and have learned and have kind of come out the other side. You know, people who learned firsthand about the power of altruism, or people who learned firsthand that, you know, complaining and griping might not be the way to go. And so it's a mix of really cool stories and fun researchers who are telling you about the science. And every episode comes with some really specific tips you can use to feel better.
Well, Dr. Laurie Santos, thank you so much. The podcast is called The Happiness Lab. The course on Coursera is The Science of Well-Being. It's free, so you can go on there and learn what the students at Yale have been learning, and you can learn it for free. And you can learn whether you've been chasing the wrong stuff, and you can learn it. What I love is that it's fact-based, it's research, it's grounded in research, and it might tell you that you've been on the wrong course. But most important, I love this idea of time affluence. Because I think that's going to be a huge shift as we come out of this. Maybe people like myself will stop living in time famine and start talking about, I always like to have a term for what I'm doing. So you just gave me a great one.
Yeah, and I think it's one we're noticing, or a lot of folks are noticing right now too. Either way, right? You know, you have folks with kids who were just doing their job before and now are doing their job and teaching a school and being a babysitter. They're feeling way more time famished. And then you have other folks, maybe because they're not working as much or they've shifted their priorities a bit, who are feeling time affluence for the first time, and it feels a little good. You know, there's another term that we teach about in class, which is JOMO, which is the opposite of FOMO, which is joy of missing out. That, like, sometimes when you realize you have a clear open thing in your calendar, you know, and you cancel that 15th Zoom happy hour or something, like that can feel really good. There's real joy in having some open space.
I've been looking at my empty calendar and I've been feeling joy, but I didn't have a joy mo. I didn't have a term for it. So joy mo and time affluence. I love it. And congratulations to you. Congratulations on the course. Good luck with the podcast. And all of you listening out there, Dr. Laurie Santos, once again, the Happiness Lab, the course, The Science of Well-Being. And if you're a student at Yale or headed that way, take her course if you can get in. By all means. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. I think that's so great. I love when people come on and they have facts behind their research. They can really steer us in a direction that's science-based, that's research-based, and that can really help us. That's certainly going to help me in my conversations with my youngest son, who's going to, quote, graduate this coming weekend from the University of Michigan, go Blue. And he was telling me that he's down, that all the kids are just kind of like, it's really depressing. And I was kind of going, well, you know, there's all these other things, but I think honoring that grief, honoring that depressed feeling, honoring the ending of that is super important. And then talking about how we can all grow from experiences like this, being able to think about how we want to grow, how we can grow, and how we can surround ourselves with people who are growing, and also how we can come out of this protecting our time moving forward. We don't have to run around like a chicken with the head cut off, which is me. And we can actually say, I'm, you know, guarding my time. I was time famine, and now I want to be time affluent, and I want to have the joy of missing out. That's not a bad thing. That's actually a really good thing. I see my friend Allison Gingold on here, who always is so supportive of my work, and also obviously of the Sunday paper. I hope all of you subscribe to the Sunday paper. It's our free weekly newsletter. It comes out every Sunday. We're also have started something called Sunday Paper Live. And then tomorrow I'm going to go over to the Women's Alzheimer's Movement, where we've started something called WHAM now, which brings you information about brain health, women's health, and Alzheimer's prevention. And then on Friday, we're going to be on Unite.us, which is 200 thought leaders, spiritual leaders, wisdom, healers, people who are going to work to help us develop the skills of a uniter. And that really will make us happy, because the skills of a uniter are the skills of compassion and empathy and joy and, service to others. And as a result of that, of being a uniter, you will in fact be happier, and you will have a life of meaning, which makes you happier. So I hope if you are not signed up for Unite.us, if you have any interest in it, go to Unite.us. It's a 24-hour global streaming event where we're also hoping to raise millions of dollars for people who find themselves living on the brink, and will be very easy to ask for money through this, and Direct Relief will raise money, and Direct Relief will be able to give you the money you need that might help you pay your bills right now, might help you pay your rent, might help you pay your electrical, might help you get food on the table. So the goal of that is to teach skills of uniter, and also to bring relief, financial relief, spiritual relief, mental relief, and build a community of uniters. We've seen the effect of dividers, and now we're going to come out of this united as a global world, as a global community. So I'm super excited to be involved in that, super excited to be a part of that. My brother Timothy is spearheading that, but so many people have joined in. Oprah is doing it, Deepak Chopra, Ariana Huffington, Jennifer Gardner, Julia Roberts, Devon Franklin, Judah Smith, Bishop Jakes, Rick Warren. I mean, the list just goes on. Former President Bush. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of people who want to be, who want to share their stories of struggle. They want to share their stories of wisdom. They want to share how they came to where they are, and they want to build the skills to come out of this period of quarantine more united in themselves, and more united as a community and as a culture. And that's why also I think what Laurie Santos was saying is so important. So many of us went about pursuing happiness in all the wrong ways. And now we have the science, we have the teachers, and we know what works and we know what doesn't work. And connections work, relationships work, friends work, loving your family works, loving the work you do, helping other people, having a purpose that's bigger than you. All of these things have science behind them. All of these things have research behind them, and they work. So thank you for joining us today on Home Together. Maybe Patrick will be back. We'll be talking tomorrow or Friday with Ariana Huffington about Unite.us and some other surprise guests. Surprise means I just don't know who I have yet, but yeah, Susie Orman to do a stay-at-home, really good idea. I'm going to reach out to her. I love that idea. She's terrific, and she's done a lot for the Sunday paper. And if you don't follow the Sunday paper on Instagram, it has its own account, so maybe you'll do that. It should bring inspiration into your life. I hope it helps you see yourself as someone who can not only change your life, but also change the life of another human being. And there's some great quote that says, if you are to change the life of just one other person, your life will have had its purpose. So thank you all for joining today. Have a great rest of your day, wherever you are, whether it's night, day, afternoon. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you tomorrow. And if you are on the Sunday paper, I'll see you on Sunday. Great. Thank you. Bye.